5, I guess. So you don't know whether she's. To be honest, we take her there and they'll take her. Can you see this? Put your eye over it. And can you see this? Can you see that? Oh no, I can't see it. But yet my mom can lay in that bed sometimes and she can see the most tiniest little thing on the floor and say, "Oh, you forgot that." I'm like, "Wait a minute. I thought you couldn't see." You take it like it is, you know. Or the other thing is, my mom is like this. You put on a movie for her. I've got all these channels for her to watch TV: Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, HBO, Showtime, Stars, Prime Video. Okay, all this, and I have a streaming service that she only watches one station for news, and that's Channel 5 News. That is it. And I'm paying like $160 for this. Okay. Okay, that's fine. It's my mother. You know, I have no problem with that. I just find it funny sometimes because my mother will lay there. Oh, John, the movie's over. But during the movie, from the beginning of it, she's passed out. She's asleep. And then at the end of it, all of a sudden, miraculously wakes up. Oh, the movie's over. I said, wait a minute, you didn't even watch the movie. I said, you were sleeping. She goes, no, I was not sleeping. I said, yeah, you were, Mom. When you sit there and you got your eyes closed and you're snoring, that's called sleeping. She said, no, I'm resting my eyes. That's her way of saying, just leave me alone. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm resting my eyes. You can say whatever you want, but I was just resting my eyes. And then my mom gets on these I'm too fat kick. I mean, she gets on the scale. Oh my God, I weigh X amount. You know, I'm not eating no more ice cream. I'm not drinking no more soda. I'm not doing this. I'm like, why? You're retired. Live the way you want to live. You know, who in their right mind cares? Only you, Mom. You're not 20 years old no more. You're 73 years old. It does not matter, you know. And you know, it's trust me, it's a very hard journey. It really is a hard journey to know that. Uh, Knowing that, you know, and what the hard other part was on hospice, they have you go and you have to go to the mortuary and prearrange all her funeral arrangements. I find that the most morbid, most awful thing to have to do. I mean, to me, it's just horrible. You know, all these emotions pop up before anything happens. You know, and then for a while, my mom and I, we have a debate on whether cremation or traditional burial. Well, my mom has wanted cremation. Well, I said no. And then, you know, the chaplain, you know, the chaplain comes in and sees me. Well, that's her decision. I said, I know, but I said no. You know, I want traditional. But in the end, you know, I will give in. Just like, you know, they have you sign a DNR paper, you know, do not resuscitate. I am emphatically against that. Okay? I am so against that whatsoever. Because if there's still hope for my mother to recover, then I'm going to make sure that happens. Okay. If it comes to the point where, you know, she's slipped, she's in a brain coma, or she's you know, whatever it may be, then yeah, I'm not going to put her on tubes and life support. There's no reason for that. I mean, she's gone. Okay. I have to look at myself sometimes and think that we're all not going to live forever. Okay? It's an emotional thing. Because I'm selfish, because this is my mother. This is my time for my mother. And even I have issues with death. Even though I know what's on the other side, but I have not been the perfect person in my life. But this is my mother. No one expects any of this to happen. You want your parents to live forever. But I know that when that time comes, I know Heavenly Father will come to me and comfort me. And I'm so afraid of that. I'm so afraid of one day I wake up and she's gone. Those are the things I fear every night when I go to sleep. It is it's very hard. And the other part of that is when we thought that she was going to go, um, I saw my brother, and he was at the time he was living on the streets, was still working, but I saw him and I said, "Hey, David, I need to let you know Mom is not doing good, and I need you to. I need you to come back there and talk to her, and and that hurt me the most. What he said is like, I don't want to know. I don't want to hear none of it. I'm a human." So I responded to, "Then get out of my face. I don't ever want to see you again in life. You make me sick." And he rode off on his bike. It bothers me because this is my brother. No matter what, I still love my brother. I love both my brothers. But their life situations is not. Um, we saw my brother one time. We were taking him to the doctor, and we saw him one time. We kept calling his name. He would not. He looked back once. I think he recognized, but would not. And I told my mom, "There's David right there. There, look." And she saw him, but he didn't acknowledge any of that. And I know that for that he will be judged for how he responded to his mother. It's a very, very hard situation to do. Because this family here, is just totally. We put dysfunctional in a dysfunctional family. I mean, we've never really been a close family. But when my grandmother was alive, she pretty much kept things together. And since my grandmother raised me, she died in 2016, and I got a message on the phone that she had died. And I lost it. This woman raised me. She raised me to have those values, those moral values, those values of. She's old school. We're raised the way of before you even left the place, you had to have your hair combed, you had to be shaven, you had to look your best to present yourself to the public, and that's the way she was. But yet my grandmother was she was a tyrant at things, and she pretty much ruled with an iron fist, or she would love all her first grandchildren, but the other grandchildren were left out. She was, don't get me wrong, my grandmother was a sweet woman, but she had a side of her that, things that things that she would do. She couldn't do anything to me, but she got a hold of my brother David, and she would say things like, you know what, blah, 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 blah. But I can't touch your brother, but I can sure come after you. My brother developed a hate for my grandmother. He despised her when I told him that she had died. It didn't faze him because of what had gone on growing up in our younger years. I mean, don't get me wrong, my grandparents took me when I was the first one they took. Because I'm the firstborn, my grandmother and my step-grandfather, I traveled the United States. I've been to every state possible. We even drove to Canada one time just for a cup of coffee and some oatmeal and whatever, and then we drove back. But it took a while to get there, but that's the way it was. I mean, I remember going to the Rose Parade for the very first time. That's when John Wayne was the Grand Marshal. It was a long time ago. I'm telling my age. And but I was always the chosen one, even with my mother. Even today, because my mother knew that my brothers could not handle the amount of but the amount of stress placed on somebody to take care. So my mother knew at the beginning of her illness that when I came into the picture, she picked me and told me, basically told my, we already knew. I already knew right off the bat. Because my brother wouldn't be able to handle any of this right now. For where the stage that we're at in the life, my brother would not be able to handle that. And plus I wouldn't, my mother wouldn't trust him. He would be stealing her money, probably. Who knows? But this is a journey that is a personal journey because it's a journey with me and my mother. It's a journey that is truly a hardening journey. I mean, the emotions the range of emotions that you go through. And yes, I'm a human being. I get frustrated just like everybody else. Okay? Because she will, if you're doing something or whatever, she will hound you and she's like, John, do this, John, do that. I mean, it's like, you have really no time for yourself. I think this is the longest I've been able to do anything. But this is my mother, and she deserves to have that, her oldest son be here and take care of her. I mean, I've got gray hairs in my head that I shouldn't have right now. I'm only 53 years old, but I've got a lot of them. But the Ten Commandments, God instructs His people to honor their fathers and mothers. Peter repeats this in Ephesians 6:1. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. God knows we are incapable to follow His commands, and thus made a way for us to be forever forgiven by Jesus' death on the cross. Belief in Him saves us, not following rules. So that commandment is to take care of my mother and father and to honor them. Even after they're gone, to honor them. Today's world is it's all about the hustle and bustle. There's no. Back when I was a kid, people took care of the elderly. They looked out for the seniors, but not in this day and age. And there's a lot to learn from the older generation, which these young people today do not fully understand. They've lived that life. They raised their kids, or even sometimes their grandkids, and the wealth of knowledge that they have of what they lived, their life was like. I mean, I hear stories about, yeah, when I was a kid, I used to walk through 5 miles of snow and have 10 cents go get me some. I mean, they walked in snow, to give you an example of how they had to trek 3 miles in snow to go to school and trek back with no shoes or something like that. You know, my mom would every once in a while she'll come out with something that's on her mind or something. Just recently she came and she told me about when she was living back in Oklahoma that she remembers a tornado and they had to go down into the cellar or basement, wherever they was that she was at, and she just popped that out of nowhere. You know, and she told me about that. I'm like, wow, mom. Or there was the time that her grandmother, my grandmother, her mother, used to trying to make her look like Shirley Temple. Put curls in her hair with saddleback shoes. And I've got pictures of my mother. You know, when my mom was younger, she was a beautiful. My mom's still beautiful, but when she was younger, she was beautiful. I mean, as I look, I see my grandmother and my mom when she's just a baby up here in the photographs, and my Uncle Bobby. I mean, my mom has had a very hard life, very hard life, and ever since I can remember as a kid, that she always liked the herb. You get my point, the herb. And I mean, she was constantly smoking it all the time. And my stepfather, Jim, he was one of those back in the day. If you had long hair and you did this and that, you were considered a hippie. My grandmother, we used to live right next door to my mother, and my grandmother hated her second husband. Oh, that's a pot dope smoking hippie. Because the man was literally taking motorcycles apart in the front of the living room. Um, he was Jim. But see, the thing was the story that my mother, we came from Massachusetts, and my grandmother brought us out here. I was only 19. I was only like 5 years old in 1971. We come here, and then my grandmother left. She left my mom stranded here. Went to Florida, and then came back. But my mother didn't know anything about California. I mean, so she met Jim, and they got married, and she had my brother Eric in 1973 or something like that. But today my uncles tell me, you should have stayed. You guys should have stayed back east. You guys would have been much better off back east. My mom was she was a CNA, whatever she was, and but mental illness came into her life early. Um, Now they say that it was a drug-induced schizophrenia. Because I immediately asked, "Hey, is this going to be passed on to generation to generation?" And he goes, at first he told me it is hereditary in your family. I'm like, how is that possible? But then I looked back on things after I was told. I was like, well, I looked at my grandmother. I said, there we go. There's the beginning of it. My mother was. It's been just the whole family's history is tragic. Tragic to the point where, why am I even talking about all this? Because I want to get across is that the commandments of God is to honor thy mother and thy father. No matter what the circumstances were. We don't want to be put in situations where we're abused. Okay? But yet, there's no instruction manual to raising kids. There's no instruction manuals to us as children taking care of your parents. There's no manuals for any of this. We have to live and follow the precepts of what the commandments tell us. I'm not, I may be a reverend, but you know what? I wear a collar, I wear vestments, but you know what? Am I really, truly serving the best I can? I mean, knowing that of all the things I've done in my life, I've got a lot of hurt in my life. I've got a lot of pain in my life, and I try to absorb that pain in any way possible. I try to deflect that pain. And knowing that I never knew my parents, my dad. So when I finally go back and I finally connected with my family back east, they knew me as a baby, but I didn't know anything about them. And so I was accepted back in, with no questions asked, because they already knew who I was, and they knew my mother. And then my Uncle Norris, he said, well, is your mother still alive? I said, yeah, she's right here, And so he kept asking me questions, to ask her, and she answered the questions. And my mother had, she had me, John, then Philip Calvin, and then my brother David, and then Eric. Well, Philip Calvin, he died in 1968, and he born in 1968, and he died in 1968. Well, my uncle was like, well, she had a child that she had, and it died from crib death. I said, no, my mom said it died from something totally different, bronchial or something or whatever. And he goes, yeah, that's right. And I knew that somewhere along the line I was going to get tested to see if I was really my father's child. And then I had found, because when I had talked to my aunt and uncle, they're like, they thought I was my father's other son that after my parents divorced, they kept, oh, Patrick, you changed your name. I said, no, this is not Patrick. This is John Braley. I am Pete's very first son he had in 1966. And, but my Aunt Elaine and, they had called around to the family telling them that, that I would be calling them. And I even sent a picture to my Aunt Elaine. Here's a picture of Pete holding me as a baby and my mom standing over him. I thought that was my proof. I even sent my birth certificate. I even sent a photo of my birth certificate to them so they could see that my father's name was on there along with my mother. And it's kind of, like to this day, I can't get a hold of my Aunt Candy, even though I don't know what the situation is, but and I would talk to my cousin before I got sent off to all the other father of the family. I guess, I wish I knew my father. I wish I knew what type of person he was. We always asked my mother, my brothers and I would always ask him, my other brother. One, Eric is from one father, and me and my brother David are from my father that she was married to. But we could never get any answers from her whatsoever about our father. And ever since I can remember as a kid, I tried searching for him until I got as an adult. I searched for him, and I've searched for the family for many, many, many years. And when I would find out anything about them, they were all had gone. They were all deceased. And my mom was no help at giving information, because I said, well, what was Dad like? He was mean. And that's what she was saying. I know my mother, and this is my time with my mother. My mom is, I know that she's going through issues in her mind. She deals with the past and wants to live in that past. And it's hard to, I wish I could have been a better mother. Mom, and I've told her many times, Mom, whatever's happened in the past is the past. Okay? I don't blame you for anything that you ever done. Okay? Because I know where that fault lies. Okay? There was no reason for you to ever think about how you could have been a better mother. You did the best you could. And under the circumstances, we understand that. Okay? But I've always longed to be my mother growing up. You know? And there's things that happened in my life that my grandmother would blame me for. Honestly, I was just a kid back then, so I don't know what the whole circumstances were, how things happened or whatever. But my mom always stood up for me. She believed me more over anything. And she, my mom would go to church. She's of a particular faith. And she was a loyal and faithful servant to that church. She would sit up the altar every Sunday. Excuse me. Yes. I gotta edit that out of the damn. Oh, come on, turn it off.